Coming up on the Sarc Fighter podcast, we'll hear from Dan and Barbara Mouradian and a case of sarcoidosis that makes every day a question.
And my doctor looked at me and she just laughed. Like, she was like, "You're kidding me, right?" Like, she's like, "No, that you can't do that. Like, that's not an option for you."
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Barbara's fight with Sarc, how she is thriving in the face of it, and Dan's amazing efforts at caregiving and fundraising for FSR.
Find a way to try and adapt your life. It's not the why, but the how that plagues my mind. A new perspective, appreciate what you've got. With dead men walking in an instant, it could be gone. And I don't know what will come. Look for silver linings, but still I find none. The words potential slipping gone. It feels directional, but I'm holding on. I'm holding on.
This is the Sarc Fighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sarc Fighter podcast. This is episode 14 and I am recording this on July 31st of 2020. You're hearing the official Sarc Fighter song called Zombie by Mark Steier and the White Hot Lizards. And Mark is a fellow Sarc fighter. You can hear his amazing story and the inspiration for the song. That's back in episode 12. If you haven't listened to that yet, you might want to give that a listen. But thanks so much to Mark and the Lizards for the song Zombie. Now, I call this the Sarc Fighter podcast because I'm fighting Sarc. So are you, whether you're a caregiver, a patient, a researcher, pharmaceutical company, somehow trying to find a way to make everybody's life better with their dealings with sarcoidosis and fighting it every day. And we're going to hear an amazing story in Barbara about that today. Of course, if you're new to the Sarc Fighter podcast, this is a place that we can gather as people fighting this disease, again, in whatever capacity that happens to be. I know that I've heard over and over from sarcoidosis patients that although there are 200,000 of us or so in the United States, that a lot of people feel like they are fighting this alone. They don't know anybody else who has sarcoidosis. And so it's just a place that we can gather. And normally I try to release a new episode every other Monday, so every second Monday. Now, if you're wondering, by the way, if you are more at risk from COVID-19 because you have sarcoidosis, of course, most of us are taking medications that suppress our immune systems. You should listen to my interview with Dr. Robert Baughman from the University of Cincinnati. That's episode 9, and he has been one of the first people to release research on the particulars of Sarc patients versus COVID-19. That's episode 9, so one of the back episodes here. Now, I do want to get to my interview with Barbara and Dan Mouradian of Chicago as quickly as I can. She is an amazing fighter. You'll be hearing her talk about how her case, like many, started out being undiagnosed even when she passed out in the shower and had to be rushed to the hospital. She was discovered by her young son and then rushed to the hospital, and that was the beginning of her symptoms. But it took a long time to figure out that it was Sarc. She'll be talking about that story. And then Dan is a fellow cyclist. You guys know, if you've been listening, that I like to ride my bike, and I have a blog called Carlin the Cyclist, and within the blog I have a whole series of posts dedicated to cycling with sarcoidosis. And so he is a fellow cyclist, and he's been riding his bike some great distances, and by doing that, raising thousands and thousands of dollars for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. And as always, there'll be information on how you can support his efforts, and that'll all be in the show notes. And he's got, you can follow him on Instagram and some other places as well. I do have to mention that if you're hearing something in the background, I have a new boxer puppy, and his teeth are coming in, and I've just given him a rawhide chew. And I apologize, but I can make him go away, but he's just going to keep coming back. So if you hear that in the background, that's what it is. And I'm sorry about that. It is kind of comical. And at least when he's chewing on the bone, he's not chewing on one of my shoes. So again, if you hear that in the background, chomp, chomp, chomp. That's what it is. Hey, I mentioned in the last podcast that I had been feeling the onset of a flare for my sarc, which is on my spinal cord on the back of my neck. Since then, I did travel. It's 7 hours from my home in the western part of Virginia up to the Cleveland Clinic for a meeting and exam with my neurologist, Dr. Moss, who was a sarcoidosis specialist. He does not think it's a flare, so that's good news. Hopefully, no prednisone for me. Yay. But he is not sure what's causing the odd sensations that I'm having in my back. And the last time I had these sensations, it was a flare. He is going to go ahead and change up my medicine. I guess this is just in case. I was on Remicade for quite a while, and I've been on Humira for close to a year now. And he thinks, well, let's go back to the Remicade and see if that. Apparently, he feels like, by looking at my record, that's when I was doing the best, and I think that's probably true. I started to get some heightened liver issues, enzymes, and so they took me off the Remicade, but I think they want to go back at a little bit lower dose, a little bit more often, is the idea, and see if that'll work. And then I'm still on azathioprine or Imurand. They're going to keep me on that, so I'm kind of fighting this on two fronts. I'm still feeling about the same, but I'm up and active. I've been able to ride my bike a couple hundred miles here in July, which was my goal. And I tried to do that in June. It didn't work out, but I did get to 200 miles in July, so yay me. And I've been working on avoiding anti-inflammatory foods, which is something that I've been talking about in the previous couple of episodes. And I got to say that I do feel better. My legs feel less sarky, which is my word. When I just have a salad for lunch, something like that, maybe with some grilled chicken on it. Pizza seems to make me feel bad, but then you look at pizza, there's a lot of inflammatory foods there with the processed flour and processed meats and the heavy cheese and the grease. And I have just noticed that when I have a slice of pizza for dinner, I feel awful for the next few hours. And the same thing, I broke down and I had an Italian sub this week from a great local sub shop. But again, bread, processed meats, and I felt awful for about 4 hours afterwards. So there might be something to that. I'd mentioned in the last podcast, the last episode, there's a blog post by Athena Merritt looking at anti-inflammatory foods, and I'll bring those links forward for you in the show notes as well. And also Andrea Wilson, the founder of the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research, has been graciously providing me with lists of foods that I should probably avoid. Can't say that I've been super good about it, but I'm being better. And I'm starting to really look for things and see if there is a cause and effect. And right now I can tell you that pizza and my beloved Italian subs are probably not great for me in terms of the way that I feel right after I eat them. All right, having said all that, just wanted to give you an update. I hope by me sharing some of that information, maybe it helps you. Apologize once again for Dougal chewing on his rawhide chew in the background. It's really obnoxious while I'm sitting here. I don't know if you can hear it, but it does sound obnoxious. And coming up, my interview with Barbara and Dan Mouradian right after this. The Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research is the nation's leading nonprofit organization dedicated to finding a cure for this disease and to improving care for sarcoidosis patients worldwide. Since its establishment in 2000, FSR has fostered over $5 million in sarcoidosis-specific research efforts and has provided disease education and support for thousands of individuals navigating life with sarcoidosis. Learn more about FSR and how they're supporting those impacted by this disease at www.stopsarcoidosis.org. Welcome back to the Sarc Fighter podcast. I am pleased today to introduce to you a couple who are fighting sarcoidosis, one in the role of patient, one in the role of caregiver and fundraiser. And joining me now are Dan and Barbara Mouradian. And guys, thank you for joining me today on the Sarc Fighter podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah. So now, where you guys? Where do you live?
We live in Chicago.
You do? Okay, great. How's the weather in Chicago here in July? We're in the middle of a heat wave in Virginia.
Hot and muggy.
Yeah, it's actually pretty nice right now. I'm not complaining. Call us in February and ask us the same question.
Yeah, I think I'll know that answer. I grew up outside of Syracuse, so I had my share of cold weather, and I got south as soon as I could. Hey, so Barbara, you are the Sarc patient here in this equation. And you have had sarcoidosis probably longer than you've been diagnosed. So you were telling me here that you passed out in the shower once, and that was your first big bell that was ringing saying something's wrong here. What was going on?
Yeah, that day I didn't feel good, and I just thought maybe like I had some like congestion happening or cold or something, and so I thought, okay, let me go just take a hot shower and see if that'll make me feel better. I have like just moments of memory. Like I remember like the fire department coming, and I remember like first getting to the emergency room, but that's pretty much it. Like I don't remember any of that week pretty much.
So you passed out in the shower.
My son.
She called me that morning and she was like, I'm having trouble breathing. And I was like, maybe you should get that looked at.
Okay.
And then by middle of the day, our son, he was probably about 8 or 9 years old at the time. He called me back and said, mom's asleep. Mom passed out in the bathroom. And I said, what? And so I, rushed home immediately and found her there unconscious in the bathroom. We called 911 and the emergency responders came. They, took her to the nearest hospital and began treating her. And she was in the hospital that time for about a week, actually.
Yeah.
And did they discover sarcoidosis at that time?
No, they didn't. They continued down the path of asthma. And they just put me on albuterol and Flovent.
And first of all, did those help at least a little or not?
Just a little bit, but the flare-ups were still there. Lots of like pain in the lung. I couldn't really do much without needing the albuterol. My lungs were definitely having a moment.
And you're an otherwise healthy person, right? At that point?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, wow. So let's follow that path along a little bit. You're in the hospital with this terrible event for a week, no memory of passing out. They're giving you asthma drugs. And then what happened next? Because something had to eventually lead to the Sarc diagnosis.
Yeah, so then I continued with my general practitioner, just our regular family doctor, and she was monitoring me for what they thought was asthma. Definitely wasn't asthma. So a year later, almost to the day, same thing happens again. I end up with what I know now is a flare-up, and hospitalized, oxygen, same thing. They did a bunch of like x-rays and checked everything. Still really couldn't find anything. I mean, it wasn't showing up. They didn't give me a PET scan at that time. They had only given me an x-ray. And so down the path we went again with asthma, but this time they did give me a small round of prednisone.
And that helped?
It helped a small tiny bit because it was just like a short, just a short quick stint, but Yeah.
And then following that second hospitalization, credit goes to our GP here. She was just one of these doctors who's not necessarily looking at just the symptoms, and she was extremely curious because, as you said, otherwise healthy individual, never had a diagnosis like this before, saw the repeated event and was like, there's more here, and just kept going and going and going. And then eventually she, the curiosity got the better of her, I think. And she just was like, we're going to order everything. We're going to order all the tests.
Yeah.
And did the PET scans, and then, Yeah.
So in between that hospitalization and us finding out, there was another event.
Oh.
And we were having dinner, and I was just like, man, I don't feel good. Like, I don't feel good. I don't feel good. I don't feel good. I feel like I can't breathe. And so he rushed me to the emergency room. This time it was up in the Northwestern, but the Evanston campus. And they brought me in. They gave me a ton of drugs because I couldn't even, I was just hyperventilating at that point. And they did an x-ray, and they thought they found a little something, but they thought that it was cancer. They thought I had potentially lung cancer.
Yep.
And so I went back to our GP, and she's like, I knew something was funky here. I'm sending you for a PET scan. And so she was like, time for a PET scan. So that's when we found out. She sent me for the PET scan. PET scan obviously showed sarcoid. And she chose my specialist, who is now Dr. Russell over at Northwestern.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So you have a pulmonary specialist now.
Mm-hmm. I have
all the specialists.
I joke because whenever they're like, "Do you have a doctor?" I'm like, "I have a fleet of doctors."
Right.
So I got a little bit of everybody. I have my pulmonologist, so she specializes in sarcoidosis, and then I have a cardiologist, an electrophysiologist, a heart failure doctor, and my GP.
Right, because we have to keep this story progressing, because so you were suffering from something. You got an official pulmonary diagnosis in 2008, and then a couple of years ago, you're mentioning heart doctors. What happened next?
So I started to have a little fluttering, and I mentioned it to Dr. Russell, and I was like, my heart has been doing this little thing where I feel like there's a butterfly kind of effect happening. And she's like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. And just my gut was like, it's not fine. So I bugged her again about it, and she's like, okay, so there was a good year of me bugging all my doctors, what is going on here? And so she said, okay, if it's still happening by November, we'll do the full rundown and see what's going on. I said, all right, fine, I agree. So I had to wait 3 months. I remember I had to wait 3 months till November, and then November came, we did the PET scan, and boom, there it was, cardiac sarcoidosis.
So when you say cardiac, is it on a valve? Is it in the heart muscle? Where is it in your heart?
Everywhere. So I have so the valve, my valve is definitely weakened. I joke that my clapping hands don't really clap. They kind of just go, halfway, and that's it. And then I have some thickening on the bottom of my heart. Yeah, there's a few different things going on. My pump function is it ranges. Sometimes it's around 45. I've seen it go as high as maybe 60, but that's rare. So yeah.
Hang on, I got a call coming in to get rid of that. So what does that live like? How does that change your day to day?
Oh, it is literally like you're saying, day to day. So it's, how am I going to wake up today? So I open my eyes and I'm like, how am I feeling today? I can't work. That's been really difficult because I don't know how I'm going to wake up. I could wake up that day and not get out of the bed. I could wake up that day and feel like $1 million and do 100 things. It just depends on how my heart is doing.
Wow. Dan, how is that as the caregiver? I mean, you can say it sucks, but it's got to be hard, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is. We're here. We're in this together. This is what this is the cards we have. We play the hands we have, and we do it. We're fortunate enough in that I have a successful career in advertising, and I'm able to support our family. We have 4 kids who live with us and 1 who lives away. But we've always been sort of together in this, and there was a time where she worked, and that was obviously that was what it was. But then a couple of years ago, we looked at the business she was running, and we looked at her condition and the health, and we were just like, maybe this is, I had made some advancements in my career, and it was kind of like at that point, all right, let's start balancing the fact that we want you around for a lot longer versus killing yourself doing a job. Let's think about this. And again, I recognize that we're extremely fortunate in that regard. Not everybody is, which is where some of the charity work that we do comes into play, because this diagnosis is terrifying for some people, and the fact that to your point earlier about it being a snowflake condition, somebody hears the diagnosis and that they don't recognize that maybe one day they're going to need 5, 6, 7 specialists to help them get through this, that the disease doesn't know and it has no organic boundaries or anything like that. So it for us, it's about helping and educating and doing those things. But yeah, I mean, as a caregiver, it's constant communication with one another, understanding where she's at that day. And even if we had plans, or even if we had, it's a patience game.
Yeah.
You just have to look at things on a day-to-day basis and say, all right, where are you at? Okay, you need to rest today. Cool. You got to rest. Like I'll take on some more of these things. And selfishly, I can say that, like, because of the current pandemic and situations that we're in and all of that stuff, like I've had to work from home now for the last 5 months. And that's been has one of our children now.
Yeah.
It's we've certainly gone closer in all of this, but yeah, I mean that's kind of where it's at for us. We just sort of look at things on a day-to-day basis and find out where she's at, where I'm at, and we support each other in the ways that we can.
Well, hang on just a second here. I'm sorry. You've got 4 kids at home.
Yeah.
And there's 5, but he's at DePaul, so he's not here with us. He's
Oh,
still in
okay.
Chicago, though.
Okay.
That makes Mom happy.
Chicago. Right. Wow. So that's, I mean, you guys are busy.
Yeah, we're busy.
You're busy.
Yeah.
And Dan, you're in advertising. Are you an art director or a graphic artist? What do you do?
In a former life, I was. Now I'm just a sales guy.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. But that's where the money is. I dabbled in public relations for a while. I had a small agency here in town, so just curious how that was playing out. And I can certainly identify with having multiple doctors, because my Sarc is on my spinal cord. So I go to the Cleveland Clinic and drive 7 hours to do that. So my main doctors are pulmonologists, because that's what Cleveland kind of focuses in. But then I have a neurologist, and then locally I have a rheumatologist. So, it's crazy. It's crazy. And trying to get everybody on the same page sometimes is difficult.
Yeah, we can relate to that.
Yeah, getting doctors.
I think at one point I was just like, Barb, you need to like call everybody, get a Zoom meeting together, and just be like, listen, y'all need to hash this shit out, because everybody's saying one thing, another thing, and like I'm one body, so
right.
We have to, you guys got to agree with each other at this point.
Yeah, and I had 2 doctors on one floor here in Virginia, in Roanoke, Virginia. And I liked both doctors, but they would not talk to each other. And one was a neurologist and one was a rheumatologist. So they wouldn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And I'm using my chart saying, would you guys, they were recommending different medicines and completely different divergent courses of care.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've had to, thankfully, I think early on, I realized that with sarcoidosis, you definitely have to be like on a level 1000 for self-advocacy, because I feel like we would joke. I would go to the emergency room and I'm like, they're not going to know what to do with me. They're going to be afraid they're going to break me, you know? And so that's kind of how it's been, where like I have to go in and I'm like, I have this, I have this, I have this. I'm on this, I'm on this, I'm on, you know, and I have to like know everything.
Right. There's been emergent situations where we've had to go to the emergency room. Maybe it's a virus or something like that, and then we get there, and before we leave, it's like, all right, Barb, what do you want to do? Because we're gonna get there, and you're just gonna be like, we're not touching you.
Yeah, yeah. So that's been kind of difficult dealing with, like when I do have a flare up, and it's an emergency situation, kind of going in and explaining like, okay, what's going on? Because sometimes they see me and then they see my heart and they freak out. Like they're like running around, and I'm like, guys, I promise you, I feel my heart pause every day. You know, so they kind of, you know, go off the deep end. So I kind of have to like say, you know, like, no, I can't do that. Like my prednisone is a touchy one with me too, because my pulmonologist doesn't want me going over a certain dose. But if I go to the ER, they want to give me like twice the dose that I normally would get. So I'm like, pause, no. And I feel like a lot of patients don't understand that you can say no. You can say, talk to my doctor. You can't say, I'm not taking that. Like that is, you know, you have, you know, it's your place to say that. So it's been a lot trying to like navigate those waters and understand like, okay, this is what works for me, understanding what works for me, and kind of just going down that path.
Did you say you feel your heart stop every day?
Oh yeah, there's definitely pauses. Yeah. Well, it feels like the way that I can describe it is, you know, when you take a big bite of food and you're swallowing and it's kind of stuck in your throat and you're like, for that moment, that's exactly what it feels like. So in that moment, I'm not breathing and my heart just pauses.
Well, that's got to be scary.
Yeah. I think it's happened for so long that I get used to it. But when I'm hospitalized, they run in the room and they're like, are you okay? You know, because on their end, it looks like a pause, you know, like a flat line. So they run in and I'm like, I'm okay. I felt that. I know I felt it. Yeah.
Have you ever had like a classic heart attack? Like where you had a heart attack? Like
so they can't tell me if I've had a heart attack, but my heart shows damage of potentially maybe something that's happened in the past.
Yeah.
They did try, my electrophysiologist did try to induce a heart attack. So he fed a line in through my groin up into my heart, tried to induce a heart attack and could not. But yeah, I've definitely been tachycardia, bradycardia, all of them, like every single kind. I mean, I've had extremely low heart rate, extremely high heart rate. I mean, if you look at my heart rate, it just looks like you just drew a bunch of squiggly lines.
There's not a lot of consistency to it, you know, and one of the things that we do, again, this is sort of like one of those patient like advocacy moments, but like at home we have a pulse oximeter, we have a blood pressure cuff, we have
thermometer.
There's a piece of technology that is like an EKG that connects to your iPhone, and so, you know, when she's feeling certain ways, she'll start, you know, charting these things. And then if something were to happen, and that's more like a preventative thing, but if something were to happen, we go to the hospital and it's like, here's my EKGs, here's my temperature, here's my blood pressure, here's my pulse ox. And like the sort of learning curve that they can skip over as a result of having all that data like on hand is, you know, it just allows her to get to treatment that much faster. And the accessibility of some of this technology now is I mean, it's very like, it's democratized that sort of medicine, you know, in terms of just like understanding what the numbers are and helping you get the help you need quicker. You know, they're gonna do everything in the hospital they can, but at the point that you can say, you know, maybe it's telemedicine because of COVID-19, like they don't want her going into the hospital at this point. So if she's having moments with her heart or breathing or something like that, she can call her specialist, she can MyChart them, she can say, hey, here's a scan, take a look at it, you know, and then they can have a dialogue about what the next best appropriate steps are.
Yeah. So I want to circle back to you know, where you are right now and your prognosis going forward. But one of the things I want to talk about today is, Dan, you have become sort of a super fundraiser for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research on your bicycle. And I'm a cyclist. I'm not riding the kind of miles that you seem to be, but I probably ride a couple thousand miles a year. So
more than me right now.
well, but that's my limit. I worked really hard to get in 50 miles a week in the month of July, and just did that. So I wanted to ride 200 miles in July.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, it's either been too raining or hot.
Yeah.
So it's been difficult, but I finally got it done. And I have a blog that I have written that a lot of Sarc patients have found, called Cycling with Sarcoidosis, where I've talked about how I tried to ride and either because of prednisone or chemo or the various things that they were giving me, how I'm doing at any given time. And I put that out there, so I think it's cathartic for me to just kind of talk about it. But also because I know that there have to be a few cyclists out there who are trying to ride through whatever it is that they have. And if it's pulmonary Sarc or cardiac Sarc like you have, it's got to be even harder. Anyway, I just mentioned that, but Dan, I'm really intrigued with what you're doing with your fundraising. So you've been riding your bike and then raising money for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Tell us how that sort of evolved. And I know you've raised at one point, what, $10,000?
Yeah, it's a total we've raised so far is just over 10 grand. This year we, so the way it all started is I've always liked cycling. I used to live in New York. It was one of my primary modes of transportation when I was doing my undergrad. I moved to Chicago. I tell people I got a car and I got a desk job and I got fat. And that, candidly, and that went on too long. So about 4 years ago, I made the decision to have bariatric surgery. At one point I was over 350 pounds.
What?
Yeah. I went through the surgery, and one of the primary motivators, aside from getting healthy and living, a better lifestyle for my family, was to get back on a bike again. I had an uncle who passed away when I was younger of a heart attack because I don't know. It was like all this is foggy. I was really young when this happened. But I sort of remember him at like a family reunion being like, I'm going to work out. I'm going to get strong again, like all this other, and then he went home and worked out and had a heart attack, because he pushed himself too far. And so I had this fear of getting healthy and getting active because I was afraid I was going to kill myself. So that was sort of the impetus for the bariatric surgery and the getting healthy, and the primary motivator, again, aside from the family, was getting back on a bike. So after the surgery and the recovery phase and all of that stuff, I bought a garbage bike. And I was like, if I can ride all through the winter on this bike, then I'll buy myself a nice road bike. And so I did. And as a result of getting that road bike and wanting to be on it more and more, there was a small charity ride that was essentially a 2-day ride from Chicago to New Buffalo, Michigan. It's about 130 miles. And it was to, service underprivileged kids in an art program in sort of the collar counties around Chicago. And we did that. It was fun. I was successful. I finished, in a good time. And on that ride, I don't know, you're sitting on a bike for a long number of hours. You start thinking you're all alone. And I said, hey, this might be a good opportunity to raise money for a foundation. And so the idea was sort of born. I talked to Barb, and the charity is called 5,000 Miles. The cycling equivalent of a marathon is a century. It's a 100-mile bike ride. And we decided, hey, let's do one in every state. 50 states, 100 miles, 5,000 miles. I'm a bit of a romanticist. So, 50 states, 5,000 miles, $50,000 was sort of the goal. And we're 11 states in, and we've raised about, like I said, just over $10,000 for the foundation. it's been great. It's been, we've done a number of states around the Illinois area. And then we've traveled a bit to go to some of the other sort of far reaching states. And they've been great. I mean, it's a good chance for us to raise awareness about the disease, to meet other, like-minded people. Cycling, a lot of people have a misconceived notion that cycling is an individual sport. It's not. It's definitely like a team sport, especially when you consider like the ability to draft other people, and you're working in a group or what they call a peloton. People will take turns in the front, and so you develop like a camaraderie along these long rides with the group of riders that you happen to be in. And you talk and you converse, and you have breaks, and you stop and you share food. There's all this sort of opportunity to discuss what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it's been a lot of fun for us. And then COVID happened, and traveling is not something that we're doing anymore. So at the beginning of the year, we started the year with a plan to do 8 states this year. California was in February. So we did that ride down in Palm Springs, and then as we got back, as everyone sort of well knows, March was sort of the I guess the moment where COVID sort of took over everything.
COVID ground zero, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. And so, a lot of the rides, boom, 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 started getting canceled or postponed. And, we're looking at these things, and we're watching it, and we're just like, the season's falling apart in front of us. And so we ended up having a conversation with Angela, Freelander from the foundation, and we had discussed potentially doing like an indoor ride on World Sarcoidosis Day, and sort of the idea for that happened like right at the week before World Sarcoidosis Day, and it ended up not going off. But she was like, "Hey, listen, what about Giving Tuesday?" And I was like, "What about Giving Tuesday? Like, what is Giving Tuesday?" And so we had a conversation about that, and I said, listen, if we want to do this, like, I'm happy to jump on a Peloton and do a 100-mile ride on my Peloton in my living room. We can live stream it. Barb ended up taking over the SFR Instagram account that day, and sharing images of the ride and the money we were raising for the foundation. And I think collectively across 5,000 miles and direct donations to SFR, we raised over, I think it was like over $4,500 that day.
Wow.
So some of those donations came in through 5,000miles.us. Some of them came direct to FSR as a result of some of the email promotions that they were doing. But it was by all intents and purposes, it was an incredibly successful day. I finished in about 5.5 hours, which is great on an indoor bike, because there's differences, like when you're on a road bike, you can get up speed, you can coast, there's obviously up and downhill.
Yeah, you didn't stop pedaling.
Yeah, on an indoor ride, you can't stop pedaling.
All right, we've got a Peloton here too, so I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite the day. It was very, very emotional.
Right.
Having all the kids around, Barb did a great job of taking over the Instagram account and sharing not only information about her diagnosis, but also mental health awareness, because that month was Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, I think that's another aspect of sarcoidosis that, while you're talking about direct diagnosis and treatment, there's a mental aspect to it that takes a massive toll. Not knowing what the next day is going to hold from a health perspective, not having that consistency can take an enormous toll on you. So, the importance of mental health was also something that we tried to highlight with the ride. And yes, I mean, it's been
getting everybody involved was fun too.
It's been a good thing. And we don't know what the future holds for the rides. Like, I mean, COVID it's clearly not something that's going away in 2 weeks. But for now, a lot of the rides got postponed. All the organizers were very, very generous with the money that we had for entry fees and things like that. And so everything's been rolled over, postponed to next year. So we'll figure out what happens and what the future looks like for that. I told Angela, and I say I'm always down to get on my bike and ride for a long time. So, so we'll figure, we'll see what the future holds for it. I would love to finish the 50 states. There was a really good ride happening in Hawaii that's supposed to go off.
Oh, we were so bummed.
That was supposed to go off in September. That was just canceled. So, for every Hawaii, there's also an Alaska. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, really.
We'll see what happens.
Wow. Well, let's make plans, and I'll go with you for one of those.
I haven't done Virginia yet. When we get to Virginia, I'll shoot you a message. We can do it together.
There's a couple of good ones. There's we'll talk about that. So I don't want listeners to get going on bicycling and they'll forget this is a sarcoidosis podcast.
For sure.
But and we actually,
it's a funny joke. Do you know how you can tell somebody's into cycling? Wait 15 minutes and they'll tell you.
That's true. I haven't heard that one before. But yeah, I love it. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Vermont. By the time listeners hear this, I'll already be in Vermont, and we're going with another couple. We're all taking gravel bikes, and we're going to go find some rail trails and maybe some legitimate Vermont gravel roads and
fun.
That. So, but at any rate, Barbara, wanted to get back to you because
sure.
You and congratulations to you for supporting him on this bicycle thing with the Instagram takeover. What kind of pictures did you show that day?
Oh, we showed a lot.
Yeah.
So I started kind of posting beforehand on the 5,000 page. And the day of, we started kind of posting like where we were, like with the donations coming in. And so FSR handled like the posting on the actual page. And then I started posting on the stories. And then periodically we would go live and people could kind of tune in and ask questions and kind of just join in on the fun. And then we went live again as he was like finishing the 100 miles for like the big celebration.
Wow. Yeah, we have a bike ride here that I helped start, the Blue Ridge Grand Fondo. And unfortunately, we don't have a 100-mile option. We have an 89-mile option. But I raised money for that last year. I have the benefit of being a local television news anchor. So, and I raised $4,500, but it took me a couple of months to get up to that. And viewers were very nice, and friends and relatives and whatnot. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So bicycling can lead to good outcomes. So Barb, you are coasting along. I say that just metaphorically.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, your pulmonary becomes cardio. What happened with your heart, and how did that evolve? How did that feel, and how did they figure it out?
So when I found out that the diagnosis was cardiac sarcoidosis, I was floored because I already knew, because I had already kind of felt a little fluttering and stuff. I'd done a ton of research and read a bunch of, like, Dan knows, like, I research the heck out of everything. Like, I'm like reading medical journals and stuff. So I already knew that it was rare to have a diagnosis prior to a heart attack, like before a cardiac event. And so I was extremely lucky to just be super in tune with my body and pick up on that tiny little change it was so minute. People would never even notice. It was just like a tiny little flutter, And so when that diagnosis came in, I kind of wasn't like, oh my God, because I kind of already knew, like I had already done a bunch of research and I was like, oh, this is looking more and more like cardiac. And so I was shocked for a moment, but I was just like, okay, this is exactly what I expected. Yeah, it's been a difficult one to live with. It's the pulmonary, I was having breathing issues and I could get through, but heart involvement is a whole another ball game, because your heart is everything for your body. It's control of your whole body. So if my heart is off that day, I'm off.
I mean, did you just go to your doctor and say, well, something's not right with my heart, or did you have an episode like you did where you passed out in the shower with the pulmonary?
No, I just felt that flutter. I just felt the flutter. And then I remember one day I was sitting on the couch. And our now 8-year-old was much smaller, and I was just kind of hanging out with her, and I felt like a little dizzy. I was like, I'm feeling a little lightheaded. And I remember I called him that day and I was like, I'm not feeling too well. Like, I feel like my heart's a little fluttery. I'm feeling a little lightheaded. And so I just kept pushing my doctors and kept pushing, because they're like, you're fine. Everything looks fine. And I'm like, no, I don't feel fine. I'm telling you. So then they, Dr. Kikos ordered Dr. Russell put me in touch with Dr. Kikos, and Dr. Kikos ordered a Holter monitor. And so I wore the monitor for a while, and they were like, oh, you know, you're having some PVCs, but it's not like I wore it for like, I don't know, like 1 or 2 weeks or something like that. Right. And I only had like a handful. So they were still kind of like, it's not really, you know, anything to be worried about because it's not too many. But I was just like, my gut was saying, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. So we kept pushing, and they did the scan, and there it was. And then they put another monitor on me, and, you know, there were more. And so as time progressed, I started to have more and more and more. But I think there was only one time where I felt really, 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 really badly, and he rushed me to the emergency room, and I was hospitalized. And that was, I think, about a week. I was hospitalized for a week. And that's when they decided, okay, we're going to switch medications, because they already knew I had cardiac sarcoidosis, but I had like a really bad episode. And that's when they hospitalized me, and they decided to put me on a really strong heart med. I was on Sotalol prior to that for my diagnosis up until this event. And then when this event happened, they switched me to, I was on metoprolol before, and then they switched me to Sotalol. So I had to be hospitalized for the week because it's such a heavy drug that they had to hospitalize me to watch me, to see my body regulate. They saw my heart stop that week. So they knew, okay, we need to get this girl on some heart meds. Yeah, something stronger than the metoprolol. Yeah.
So are you taking heart meds as well as Sarc meds?
Yeah, so I'm on quite a bit. So I'm on, I'm on daily preventive inhaler. Yep. I'm on albuterol as needed. I'm on pantoprazole for my stomach now because lots of steroid usage, my esophagus and all that's a wreck. I'm on the Sotalol, and I'm also on azathioprine, an immunosuppressant, to keep me low, and so, you know, keep my immune nice and low. And then depending on where I'm at, they will throw more stuff in. So I'm not on prednisone right now because I'm in good shape, but if anything happens, then, you know, I go right back on prednisone, and, you know, depending on whatever I need. Breathing meds. So if my pulmonary sarcoidosis is out of whack, I definitely go on the nebulizer treatments right away, because usually I cannot breathe. So yeah, it just depends. Different cocktails for different moments of what I'm feeling at the moment. Yeah.
I'm on Humira and azathioprine right now.
Yep.
So but it's way better than last year when I was on 80 milligrams of prednisone a day.
Oh yeah. Plus, and then there's the whole weight gain and fatigue and all that comes with prednisone.
Yeah. I don't know how much I had. You know, I'm on TV every night, and my face just started puffing up.
Oh, the moon face.
Viewers are like, "Oh, bless your heart, what's wrong with you?"
And it happens so fast.
So it's like you're having like an allergic reaction to bees. Yeah. Everything just explodes.
Definitely have been there.
Yeah. So, and we actually had to do a story about me just because I continued to work through it all. We had to tell viewers what was going on. You just couldn't hide it. It was ridiculous. And the mood swings and the mental health and all the things you guys are talking about. It's so real.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Real. And my poor wife, she's a saint. She is a saint for putting up and my coworkers.
It's a roller coaster for sure, because a lot of emotions. I have a therapist. She's wonderful. I see her sometimes once every 2 weeks, sometimes every week, whatever I'm needing at the moment. But there's a lot of, I think what people don't realize with this diagnosis is there's a lot of mourning that happens. Because you can't do things. I've always been super active. The business that I had that I left was high-end event planning. So I very high stress job. So, you know, I had to walk away from that, but I've always been like a very creative person, a very social person. Definitely always have like, you know, a mile list of, you know, things that I would like to do. And I had to start ticking off that list of things I can't do. And so there's almost like a mourning period that happens where you're like in a little bit of a depression because you can't do the things that you want to do or could do, or, you know, things like that. So yeah, it's a definite difficult mental.
You're literally mourning the loss of the life you once had.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah. And I had to address a lot of that as well.
Oh yeah.
Just like you, you know, I was one of these people with a long to-do list, and we talked about the bicycling, and you know, I was a decent marathon runner for a while, and now I can't run across the street. So
yeah,
because I've lost the dexterity in my legs from the lack of signals from my brain to the lower extremes of my body. So I've talked to therapists about that same thing. And then mourning, you're the first person other than me that's talked about actually mourning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first time that it happened, we were going to Australia with our son, and I went to the doctor, you know, like it was one of those like moments where you're just like not even thinking that this is not an option for you, because in your head you're like, I can totally do this. And so I took her the paperwork from the travel company asking for health permission for scuba diving. And it had been something that was like a dream of mine to always go scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef. And my doctor looked at me and she just laughed. Like she was like, "You're kidding me, right?" Like she's like, "No, that you can't do that. Like that's not an option for you. Like where your lungs are, you just can't." So she said the only thing that she would approve me for was snorkeling. And I remember getting in the car and crying my eyes out and calling him and crying my eyes out, because I was just like, it was that first moment where someone else was telling me I couldn't do something because of my health. And I'm one of those people that's like, I'll do whatever I want. What, you know, and if you challenge me, I'm like, I'm going to do it even more, and I'm going to do it 10 times better. Watch me. So for someone to tell me you can't do that was really, really difficult. And that was like the first moment where I had to like mourn like a life goal and just kind of like accept that, okay, I'm going to be there. I'm going to snorkel. It's going to be great. And Dan was so amazing because he was signed up for it. And he's like, no, if you're not going, I'm not going. And I cried again because I was just like, oh my God, you know.
And one of the things that she always says that, you know, we remind ourselves of is, and this is something that's especially poignant for me, is like, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes you have to adapt. I mean, that's, and again, certainly in today's world that we're living in, you know, adaptation is topic du jour, and it's something that everybody talks about. But with this disease, you know, forget about staying at home and working versus not work. You know, it's like there's things that come up every day that's like, you know what, no. And she has to remind herself, like, just because I could do this yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to be able to do it tomorrow. Yeah. And you can't like, she's very good at like not destroying her morale and her self-esteem. Not to say it doesn't get to her, because it obviously does, but yeah, she's really good at reminding herself that like you can't compare your former self to your current self. Every single day is a new day, and we're grateful to be here. We're grateful to be alive and breathing and all of those things. And sometimes you just got to take it for what it is and move on and adapt to whatever. And I personally hate this phrase, but moving into like the idea of whatever the new normal is, you know, it's there. You know? And maybe there's a reaction I have to that phrase because every day is a new normal, but it's kind of one of those things that like you cannot compare yourself. And she's right, you know, just taking it for what it is and understanding where we are today and what the current system, you know, current capability is today, and adapting and moving on.
That comparison is the thief of joy. I actually said that to my wife this week at lunch. and then you bring it up. It's like, it's just so true. It's just so true.
And it's hard because you see other patients and you see what they're doing, and sometimes you're like, wow, like he or she's doing a lot. Like, I can't do that today. So sometimes it's hard, but you kind of just have to go with, whatever you're feeling that day. I mean, before my diagnosis of cardiac sarcoidosis, I used to walk 7 miles Monday through Friday with my 2 toddlers in the stroller for 5 days a week with my pulmonary diagnosis, because my pulmonologist was like, work your lungs. It's great to work the lung and get it moving. And I really did see a difference, and I really did feel different. And I felt like, wow, this is really helping me. It was not only, I didn't realize that it was helping me physically, but it was actually helping me emotionally too, because it was almost like a daily release of like, and of course you're receiving those lovely endorphins and you're ready to go, But then I got the diagnosis of cardiac sarcoidosis, and it's been a little bit more difficult with that. Like, I can still walk, but it's more like 3 miles, and it takes me twice as long, but I can still get out there and I can still walk, and I still try to be active and try to, even if it's just home, trying to do a little each day to like stay active.
Right. Do you feel guilty when you see the other Sarc patients that can't do that? And
I do feel bad. Yeah, I do feel bad, because I've seen many patients, really having a really tough time. I took a calligraphy class that I was like, I really want to take calligraphy. And so he gave it to me as a gift one year, and there was only 4 students in the class, and then 1 student didn't show up. So it was just 3 of us. And what are the odds? One of the women has sarcoidosis in her eye. And so, they were like, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I, start talking about myself and why I'm here and, health and all that. And she's like, are you kidding me? I have sarcoidosis too. And it was really difficult because she couldn't see. And so to see patients who are enduring things like that, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult.
Wow. Yeah. I joined the FSR advisory board or whatever, advocate board, and met some folks. And you're on the board also, or are you a advocate?
Yeah,
we're not on the board, but we do the charity work with them. We've actually looked at some of the advocacy things that they do, and some of the like patient but we're not officially, and we're not doing those things yet.
Yeah. So, I just did it this year. We had a meeting. It's not a board. It's just a group of advocates.
Yeah.
But I got there and met some people, and we're all in this meeting, and they're giving, one woman is giving herself a shot during the meeting because she do that every day. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm feeling sorry for myself. But there's a lot of people here who are in, are in much worse shape, but but there's still that mourning. There's, like that's that snowflake disease. It affects everybody differently. There's no 2 similar cases. And, but when you're used to being active, it's hard to tell yourself that you can't be active.
Oh yeah. That's, I think that's been one of the most difficult things. It's just kind of like taking each day and saying like, okay, what can I do today? And he's been great. Like if we have plans, he's like, only if you're feeling okay, so I don't have that pressure of, okay, I have to be there. I have to go. And my family has been great too. Like they totally get it. And, they're like, no, if you don't feel good, like you don't have to be there. And I've missed family events. I've missed birthdays. I've been hospitalized during weddings and births and this and that. And that's been hard, but everybody has been wonderful and very understanding. And they just kind of are just like, we're in your corner. We want you to get better.
You have to embrace the audible.
There you go.
To borrow a football metaphor.
Right. I
you have to be able to pivot and move on. And all right, we're not doing that today. It's okay. We'll do it next week or whatever,
Yeah. And we've been really great with like when something happens, it's this like immediate like separation of duties. So like if I call him and I'm like, I'm heading in, I have a bag that's in my closet that I call my hospital bag. Like a woman has a pregnancy bag, like when they're about to give birth. I have a hospital bag ready at all times. Last year in 2019, I was hospitalized 4 times, and I probably went into the ER maybe like 6 or 7 times, maybe. The 4 times that I was hospitalized, a few of them were pneumonia. no immune system. So you get a cold and it like, spirals down into pneumonia. And then in February I believe that one was heart related. But yeah, I have a bag ready to go. But if something happens, it's kind of like, hey, I'm heading in. And he's like, okay, let me know when you get there. And we kind of like divide and conquer. And my job is to be there and do what I need to do. And his job is to manage the kids. So we just kind of divide, and his job has been really understanding. They know what's going on. Family knows what's going on. My mother-in-law has flown up a few times to care for the kids so that I can see him, because I still want to see him. And the kids will visit me if it's allowed. If the doctor's allowed, they'll visit me. And so I think this year I was hospitalized this year on my birthday. No, Valentine's Day. And last year I was hospitalized on my birthday. So we celebrated my birthday in the hospital. They brought me cake. And so a lot of things have to happen. We have to like adapt and just kind of like celebrate that way.
Yeah. Right. Wow. That is a lot. That's a lot. So I just want to go back to your trip to Australia. I like to snorkel as well, and seeing the Great Barrier Reef is also one of my bucket list things. Did at least there come a point when you're snorkeling and you're looking down, and I'd like to know what you saw, where you thought, well, I'm beating sarcoidosis because I'm here and I'm doing this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Afterwards, we were discussing like the difference between, I grew up in South Florida. I grew up in the water. I could swim before I could walk, all of those things. And, afterwards we were on the boat ride back to the shore, and, she was having a little bit of moment, and I was like, Barb, we did it. Like, we saw the Great Barrier Reef. We were here. We saw, we didn't see the whole thing because it's like the entire coast of Australia, but we were here. We did it. Yeah. Like, we saw it. This is, check that box. We're good. Yeah. But no, go ahead.
Yeah. And I don't feel like I missed anything, which was awesome. I mean, we saw some incredible things. I mean, we saw a giant clam, probably the size of a small car. Yeah. And it was incredible.
It was a clear day. Yeah. Like, when you travel and you're on these, you go on trips or something like that. You like when we did a similar thing in Mexico, and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Yeah. Because they had a storm the day before and it kicked up all the dirt. So we were fortunate enough that the weather was nice. It didn't rain. There was good visibility in the water. Like, all of those things happened. Everything sort of lined up for us the right way, and it worked out good. We saw it. And, it was fun.
Yeah. I feel like every time.
I'm sorry?
Did you see a clownfish?
We did not see a clownfish.
I don't think we did.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I'm a saltwater aquarium guy too. So.
Nice.
Yeah, and I like to snorkel, and at some point I started with scuba diving lessons once, and the weather got bad, and I didn't finish it. So
it happens.
No, I think we've just kind of like, it sucks every time I'm told I can't do something, of course, but I kind of just put all my energy and effort into what I can do. That's the next step. I'm like, okay, I'm worn. All right, let's move on. I'll like look at what I can do, and then we'll just go. We're all in kind of people, so we're just going full throttle. And so we've snorkeled quite a bit. We've done snorkeling in Australia. We've done it in Cuba. We've done it in Mexico. Oh gosh, did we do it in the Dominican Republic? Belize. And Belize was one of those moments where that was the aha moment. When we were in Belize, I remember the boat operator, a little tour guide, was like, all right, there's sharks, and we're going to feed them, and you can jump in and swim with them. And Dan looks at me, and I was like, I'm doing it. I'm jumping in, And so I think one thing that sarcoidosis definitely has brought out in me is that I'm ready. I'm ready to do anything. Like, I'm ready to go. So, before I kind of was a little bit more timid, and if somebody was like, oh, do you want to go like jump off a cliff into this hole? I'd be like, no way, absolutely no. But now with sarcoid and cardiac, with the pulmonary and the cardiac, I'm kind of just like, live every day. I know it's so cliche, but live every day to the fullest. So if we have any opportunities, I'm just ready to go. So in Belize when he's like, do you want to jump in with the sharks? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'm jumping in sharks. So I jumped in, and it was amazing. And in Aruba, there was like a little kind of cliff that you had to like climb over and under it through all these like crazy jagged rocks to jump into like a natural formed pool. And I was like, I would never have done that. Never, like before Sarc Fighter, never. I would have said, no, you're crazy. I'm not doing that. And that day I was like, I'm jumping in. I'm ready. Let's go. And my kids are like, I don't know, Mom. And I'm like, let's go. We're doing it. Like, we're jumping in this crazy hole. So we all did it, and it was fantastic. So I think like that's definitely been nice to kind of just like let go, and just enjoy everything that I can possibly enjoy.
Right. Now, every bike ride I take, I'm like, I just beat sarcoidosis one more time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. And that's kind of the way I look at it. And I also have found that I find peace and tranquility and hope just like sitting on the deck listening to the birds sometimes.
Yeah.
Which I never would have done. I was like, I'm not going to slow down long enough to listen to the birds. And it sounds corny even saying it out loud, but
no, I agree 100%. Yeah. We have a back patio, and in the mornings I'll go out there and I'll listen to the birds, and we get a lot of cardinals, and the second I hear the cardinals, I jump out. But I totally agree with you. Like, I led a very go kind of life prior to, and didn't really slow down. And I definitely have slowed down a lot and enjoy things on a completely different level. And I look around now and see a lot of folks just like on the track, choo-choo, chugging along, like everything's a blur. And I'm just like, slow down. So I definitely, yeah. I've got, a television newsroom. I got a bunch of people like that. They're young too. Yeah.
I'm the old man in the newsroom, and I'm like, yeah, I remember being like that.
Definitely.
Story. Okay.
And I can get through to some of them. I'm like, just slow down, just for one day. And then they're like, wow, that was amazing. I'm like, you see, it doesn't always have to be this like million miles a minute thing,
Right. That's funny. Well, guys, thank you. Dan, I know you'll send me all of your fundraising information, and I can put it in the show notes.
Thanks. I'll email it to you as soon as we go.
All right. Folks can follow you guys where on Instagram? Is there a link?
Yeah, it's Instagram.com or, Instagram, and the account is 5,000, the number, so 5000 miles.us. And that's also the website. So www.5000miles.us. That links to our GoFundMe page, which you can make donations to the charity, to us, and then those donations are sent to the charity FSR. None of the money goes to us; it all goes directly to FSR. And then obviously you can follow us on Instagram, on the website, and then both of us have our own individual accounts as well.
Yeah, and we do some fun stuff periodically. Like one race, everybody who donated over $25 got a t-shirt. We've done stickers. We try to keep it fun, and we do all kinds of different little things. So stay tuned, because we're always cooking up something.
All right. That all sounds fun. And so, send all that information to me, and I'll put it in the show notes, and listeners can check it out.
Yeah.
Well,
in the meantime, I would just say, Dan, keep pedaling. And Barb, I hope you have more better good days than bad ones. You look great today.
I'm feeling good. Today's a good day.
Awesome. And thanks for sharing your story here on the Sarc Fighter podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, John.
Thanks again to Barbara and Dan for sharing their stories. And Barbara, hang in there. You're doing great. You look great this morning. Of course, we did the Zoom interview, so I was able to see you. The viewers were not able to, but I will be posting on the Sarc Fighter Instagram page some images from our interview. And you guys heard Dan say that he got up to 350 pounds, and you'll want to look at some of those pictures, because he looks like a stick right now. I can't imagine this guy ever weighing 350 pounds because he looks super buff and super fit, and like some of the cyclists that you are used to seeing, people who ride their bikes a lot and, you know, don't have any extra weight on their body at all. Anyway, you look at the pictures on Instagram. I'll be posting a few of them, and you can see. But hang in there, Barbara. A couple of takeaways from that interview: the fact that she has to keep a hospital bag packed because she never knows when she has to jump up and go to the hospital because her pulmonary or heart-related sarcoidosis issues are going to flare up. She has multiple stays in the hospital every year, but she is staying active. They're going places. COVID has restricted that, but sarcoidosis hasn't. And I love the fact that she says she's more inclined to do scary things that she never would have done before, including jumping into the water with feeding sharks in Belize. Wow. Yeah, I guess when you feel like you never know what the next day is going to be like, you might as well enjoy life to its fullest. And when you have the chance to safely jump in the water with sharks that are feeding on something other than humans in Belize, why not do that? I'd like to think that maybe I would. But then she also, kind of like me, it's like you can just get out on the deck and you hear the birds sing and you think, you know, this is life, and there's... that's my version of stop and smell the roses. And so I asked her if she was doing that, and she had the same exact experience I did. So stop and listen to the birds sing. Why not? And then the other thing is, another takeaway is that the mental health issues and the fact that you're in mourning, and you're mourning the loss of the life that you once had. And Barbara said that is very much something that she has had to deal with, and she has a therapist, and she is working through that. And I've heard that from other Sarc patients, and I have dealt with that myself. And then Dan mentioned that comparison is the thief of joy, which is something that is it's so true. You compare your life now to your life. For me, you know, it'll come up on, oh, here's Facebook. Here's where you were 5 years ago. Well, guess what? 5 years ago, I didn't have Sarc. 5 years ago, I was doing all these amazing things. And you look at that and you think, you know, I just have to look at life today, the way it is today, and not try to compare it to 5 years ago. And because it's the thief of joy. And that definitely can happen, so you have to be aware of that. But on the other hand, what I saw was a person who was upbeat, who has learned to take it one day at a time and is dealing with this and has a system in place where, you know, some days it's going to be like this and some days it's going to be like this. And then, of course, all of Dan's fundraising and his cycling and the ways that you can help him raise money to fight sarcoidosis. All the information will be in the show notes. So thanks so much to Barbara and Dan for sharing their story. I hope that if you are listening to this, that you are finding this podcast helpful. People are willing to come on. They're talking about their lives. They're sharing intimate details. And the idea is that it gives all of us perspective about how sarcoidosis is affecting other people's lives, and we can compare it to our own lives and maybe see that, you know, other people are doing it, other people are succeeding, and other people are suffering just like we are, and it just gives you that little bit of comfort in knowing that you're not alone. So thanks to Barbara and Dan. Thanks to everybody for listening. That's all for this episode. Until next time, keep fighting.
Wherever there is happiness, fight to be there too. And remember there are friendly smiles, try hard to smile too. And wherever there is sunshine, don't let fear darken you. And whatever happens, please remember